I opened the door expecting carolers instead. I got my husband's past in a red wool coat. Snowflakes clung to Caroline, Pierce's silver hair like cheap tinsel. She stood on my porch holding a covered dish, lips curled in that same half-smile she wore the day she handed Frank divorce papers 42 years ago. The porch light caught the gold buttons on her coat, flashing like warning signals. "Janet dear," she said, voice syrupy. Frank insisted I bring my famous cranberry relish. I felt my stomach drop straight through the welcome mat. Frank appeared behind me, wiping his hands on the apron I'd ironed that morning. "Surprise, honey," he chuckled, as if this were a puppy under the tree. "Caroline's joining us for old times' sake." Old times. The words scraped my ribs. I smelled her perfume, first white shoulders, the same scent that used to cling to Frank's collars when he came home late from client dinners in 1981. My fingers tightened on the doorknob until the brass bit cold into my palm. Caroline stepped inside without waiting. Snow dripping from her boots onto my pine floor, she surveyed the twinkling tree, the stockings I'd hung with care, the framed photo of Laurie's wedding. Her eyes lingered on Frank's arm around me in that picture, then flicked to the real Frank now. Standing too close to her, I shut the door. The click echoed like a judge's gavel. 40 years of Christmas mornings, of choosing the perfect prime rib, of teaching Laurie to roll pie crust 40 years. And now this woman thought she could waltz in with a side dish and claim a seat at my table. Frank took her coat. I watched the red wool slide from her shoulders, revealing an emerald blouse cut lower than any 67-year-old needed on Christmas Eve. My heart hammered so loud I swear the garland trembled. Laurie bounded down the stairs in her reindeer sweater. "Grandma, the cookies." She froze. "Who's this?" Caroline extended a manicured hand. "I'm Caroline, sweetheart, your daddy's first wife." First, the word sliced clean through me. I tasted metal. My reflection in the hallway mirror looked suddenly old, cheeks hollow, eyes wide like a deer staring down headlights. I forced my lips into something resembling a smile. "Dinner's at 6. I managed. My voice sounded far away, like it belonged to someone braver. Caroline breezed past me toward the kitchen, my kitchen heels clicking like a countdown. Frank followed, already laughing at something she whispered. I stood rooted in the foyer, snow melting into puddles around my slippers. Through the archway, I saw her lift the lid on my roasting pan, nodding approval at my herb-crusted beef, my herbs, my 40 years of perfecting the recipe she now judged with a tilt of her head. I pressed my palm to my chest, felt the rapid flutter beneath my sweater. This was my home, my holiday, my family, and I would not let her take one more thing from me. Not tonight, not ever. Something hardened inside me, solid as the frozen cranberry relish in her dish. I straightened my spine, smoothed my apron, and followed them into the kitchen. Whatever came next, I'd be ready. Every silver fork I placed felt like a weapon I wasn't allowed to use, yet the dining room glowed under strings of white lights. But the warmth couldn't reach my fingers. I arranged the good china my mother's rose pattern, each plate older than Laurie, while memories marched through my mind like soldiers. Frank's voice from 1983, Caroline's ancient history. "Jan, you're my future." I'd believed him then, the night he proposed on bended knee in this very room, snow tapping the windows like applause. I set his water glass at the head of the table, exactly where it belonged. 440 Christmases. I remembered the year Laurie was 5, how Frank hung her stocking so high she needed his shoulders to reach. Caroline had sent a store-bought card that year, generic Santa, no signature. I'd burned it in the fireplace and told myself that was the end. The crystals sparkled as I polished. Another memory, Frank coming home with lipstick on his collar in 89. Klein's wife hugged me goodbye. He'd sworn. I'd pretended to believe him because Laurie was asleep upstairs and the mortgage was due. My hands trembled now. The gravy boat slipped, clinked too loud against the platter. Laurie appeared in the doorway, phone in hand, brow creased. "Mom, your hands." I looked down, my knuckles white around the silver ladle. "Just cold," I lied, flexing my fingers, but Laurie's eyes, my 30 years younger, saw everything. She crossed the room, took the ladle gently. "Dad said Caroline's coming. Is that okay?" "Okay." The word hung between us like icicles ready to fall. I thought of all the times I'd told Laurie to stand tall, to speak her truth. Now here I was, setting a place for the woman who'd tried to erase me. I smoothed the tablecloth, pressed out wrinkles that weren't there. "Your father thinks blending families is simple," I said, my voice steadier than my heart, like tossing salad. Laurie's mouth twisted. She knew. She'd heard the stories whispered at family reunions, seen the way Caroline's name made me flinch. I placed the last napkin, folded into a perfect bishop's hat, the way my mother taught me. The table looked beautiful, deadly. 8 place settings, 8 lives about to collide. I ran my finger along the carving knife's handle, felt the cool weight of possibility. Laurie touched my arm. Mom, I met her eyes. Go check the rolls, sweetheart. She hesitated, then obeyed. The moment she left, I allowed one tear, one only, before wiping it away with the corner of my apron. The battle lines were drawn in starched linen and candlelight, and I intended to win. Gloria leaned in. Some ghosts don't rest, they are SVP. She arrived with pecan pie balanced on one palm, snowflakes melting in her gray curls, 66 years old and still, built like the nurse who'd delivered half this town. Gloria filled doorways with more than her frame. She carried truth like oxygen. I took the pie, warm through the foil, and she stepped inside, nose wrinkling. White shoulders, she muttered. Only one woman wears that poison. Her eyes found Caroline across the room, perched on my sofa like she owned it, laughing at something Frank said. Gloria's hand found my elbow, grip firm, back hallway. Now. We slipped past the coat rack. She smelled of vanilla and righteous anger. Spill, she ordered, voice low enough only I could hear. Frank invited her, I whispered. The words tasted like rust. For dinner, like it's normal. Gloria's eyes narrowed to slits. Normal's what you make it, Janet. And that woman's been circling since Frank's prostate scare. She tapped her temple. Some ghosts keep receipts. I glanced toward the living room. Caroline held court now, showing Laurie old photos on her phone. My daughter's polite smile looked painted on. Frank hovered, refilling Caroline's glass before his own wife's. Gloria followed my gaze. She still got those love letters. My breath caught. You knew. Everyone knew, hun. She used to wave them at bridge club like war medals. Gloria's hand squeezed my arm. Question is, what are you going to do about it? I looked at the pecan pie in my hands, smelled the caramelized sugar, felt the weight of 40 years of choosing peace over pride. Gloria's eye sharp as winter aired, me to choose different this time. Through the archway, Caroline's laugh floated, bright and cutting. Gloria leaned closer. I brought extra whipped cream, she said, and a spine. If you need to borrow one. I met her stare. Something shifted inside me, like ice cracking on a pond. Keep the spine, I said. I've got my own. Gloria's grin could have lit the tree. That's my girl. She sailed toward the kitchen, pie held high like a battle standard. I followed, pulse steady for the first time all evening. The night was young, and Gloria had just handed me ammunition. His toast tasted like vinegar in my mouth. Frank stood at the head of the table, glass raised. Cheeks flushed from too much bourbon and not enough sense. The dining room lights caught the sweat on his forehead, made it glisten like gilt. 2 blended holiday cheer, he announced, voice booming. Old friends, new memories. Caroline's hand settled on his forearm, casual, possessive. Her nails, festive red, dug in just enough to mark territory. I watched Frank's smile widen, watched him lean into her touch like a dog greeting its master. My wine glass trembled in my grip. The Cabernet sloshed, dark as blood. Around the table, Laurie stared at her plate. Gloria's eyes flicked to me, sharp and waiting. The carving knife sat inches from my right hand, blade catching candlelight like a wink. I stood, the chair legs scraped loud against hardwood. 8 faces turned. Frank's brow creased. Jan, everything okay? Fine, I said. My voice cut clean through the room. Just need air. I set my glass down untouched, walked to the kitchen on legs that didn't feel like mine. The swinging door shut behind me. Silence rushed in, broken only by the hum of the refrigerator and my own ragged breathing. I gripped the counter, knuckles white. The carving knife's twin waited here, nestled in its wooden block. I wrapped my fingers around the handle, cool, familiar, heavy with promise. Footsteps, soft. Laurie slipped through the door, eyes wide. Mom. I released the knife, turned to face her. My daughter, 41 years old, mother herself, looked suddenly 10 again, scared of thunderstorms. He toasted her, I said. The words scraped my throat raw. In my house, at my table. Laurie's arms wrapped around me. I smelled her shampoo, felt her tremble. What are you going to do? She whispered. I pulled back, met her eyes. I'm going to serve dinner. My voice steady now, cold as the prime rib waiting under foil. and then I'm going to serve something else. Through the door, Frank's laugh boomed again, followed by Caroline's lighter trill. I picked up the platter, felt its weight settle into my palms like justice finding balance. Lori touched my arm. "Mom," I smiled, small, sharp, certain. "Pass the gravy, sweetheart. The night's just getting started." One tilt of the ladle, and 40 years of resentment poured out in crimson. I carried the silver pot from the stove, steam curling like whispered secrets. The mulled wine glowed deep red under the chandelier, cloves and cinnamon masking something sharper beneath. Caroline sat to Frank's right, white cashmere coat draped over her chair back like a surrender flag she'd never wave. I circled the table, refilling glasses. My apron brushed her shoulder. She didn't flinch. When I reached her, I let my hip bump the chair just enough. The ladle tipped. A perfect arc of scarlet splashed across pristine wool, soaking through to the silk lining in seconds. Caroline shrieked. The sound pierced straight through the holiday music, high and animal. She leapt up, chair scraping backward. My coat. Frank scrambled for napkins, dabbing frantically. "Jan, careful." I set the ladle down with deliberate calm. "Oh, Caroline, I'm so sorry." My voice trembled just right. "These old hands aren't what they used to be." She glared, wine dripping from the hem onto my hardwood. The stains spread like spilled blood at a crime scene. I watched it bloom, felt something inside me bloom too. Frank knelt beside her, blotting, murmuring apologies that should have been mine to receive. Lori's eyes met mine across the table. A flicker of understanding passed between us. Gloria lifted her glass in silent salute. The coat, $4,000. Caroline had bragged earlier, was ruined. Cashmere doesn't forgive. Caroline snatched it from Frank's hands. This was Italian. I pressed a hand to my chest, eyes wide. "I'll pay for dry cleaning." Of course, my tone said this stain would laugh at any cleaner. She stormed toward the powder room, heels stabbing the floor. Frank followed, still apologizing. I picked up the ladle, refilled my own glass. The wine tasted sweeter now. Around the table, conversation stuttered, then resumed in hushed tones. I smiled at each guest in turn, serene as the Virgin Mary in the nativity scene on my mantel. The appetizer was served, and it left a mark. She smiled as my mother's roses shattered, then I smiled wider. Caroline returned from the powder room, coat slung over her arm like a battle casualty, her cheeks flushed, eyes bright with calculation. She took her seat, accepted Frank's murmured sympathies, then reached for the relish dish, my mother's hand-painted roses. The one piece I'd saved from her estate. I watched her fingers close around it. Time slowed. The dish had survived 3 moves, 2 grandchildren, and my own clumsy years. Caroline lifted it high, pretending to pass the cranberries. Her elbow knocked the edge of the table. The plate slipped. It fell in perfect silence, then exploded against the floor. Porcelain shards, scattered like pink petals in a storm. One piece skittered under Frank's chair, another landed in the gravy boat. The roses, my mother's roses, lay in ruins. Caroline gasped, hand to mouth. "Oh, Janet, I'm so clumsy." Frank bent to gather pieces. "We'll glue it, hun, glue it," as if superglue could mend 60 years of Sunday dinners. Of my mother teaching me to set a proper table. Of her voice saying, "Presentation is love." Janet. I stared at the wreckage. My chest tightened until breathing hurt. Lori knelt, picking up a shard with trembling fingers. Grandma's plate. Caroline's eyes gleamed. Such a shame. But accidents happen. Accidents, the word hung in the air like smoke. I looked at the stain on her coat, now mirrored by the stain on my heart. She thought she'd drawn blood. She had no idea. I'd just begun bleeding. I stood slowly. Every eye followed. "No harm done," I said, my voice steady, almost kind. "I have another plate." I stepped over the shards, careful not to crush them further. In the kitchen, I opened the china cabinet, fingers brushing the spare set I'd never used. When I returned, I carried a plain white platter. Nothing special, nothing breakable. I set it in the center with a soft clink. Caroline's smile faltered. She'd broken something irreplaceable. I'd just made her realize some things can't be broken twice. My daughter's face went pale. She'd just read her father's secret menu. Lori slipped into the hallway powder room to wash gravy from her sleeve. Carolyn's purse sat open on the counter, phone screen glowing. My daughter meant to move it. Instead, she saw. The text thread stared up at her. Frank's name at the top. Messages from last month. "Still think about our cabin nights." Another. "Janet's asleep by 10. Meet me." Laurie's breath caught. She scrolled. More photos. Old ones, yes, but new ones. 2 francs hand on Caroline's knee at the county fair. Time stamped September. Laurie's hands shook so badly, she nearly dropped the phone. She screenshot everything. Then another, and another. Her thumb hovered over evidence. She forwarded the thread to Gloria, who waited in the kitchen like a general awaiting orders. Gloria's phone buzzed. She read, eyes narrowing to slits. Lord have mercy, she muttered. She looked up, met Laurie's gaze through the doorway. My daughter stood frozen, phone clutched to her chest like a wound. I entered 4 more napkins and saw them. Laurie's face, eyes swimming, Gloria's granite. Mom, Laurie whispered. She held out the phone. I took it. The screen blurred, then focused. Frank's words, Caroline's replies. Plans, lies, 40 years reduced to emojis and midnight promises. My knees buckled. I gripped the counter. The screenshots burned into my retinas. Cabin nights. The same cabin where Frank proposed to me. Where we conceived Laurie. Where I'd scattered my mother's ashes in the lake. Gloria's hand settled on my shoulder. Breathe, Janet. I couldn't. The air tasted like betrayal. Laurie's tears fell onto the screen, smudging the evidence. I wiped them away with my thumb. How long? I asked. My voice sounded like someone else's. Laurie shook her head. Months, maybe longer. Through the wall, Frank's laugh boomed again. Caroline's lighter trill followed. I looked at the phone, then at the broken china on the dining room floor. 2 disasters. One night, I closed the messages, slipped the phone into my apron pocket. Laurie touched my arm. What do we do? I met her eyes, my eyes, older, harder. We served the main course. Appetizers served. Time to season the main course. I slipped into the walk-in pantry, closed the door until the latch clicked soft. The overhead bulb cast a weak glow over shelves of canned peaches and Christmas tins. I pulled the grocery list from my pocket. Milk, eggs, revenge. Caroline's scarf lay folded on the shelf where she'd left it, cream-colored monogrammed CP in burgundy thread. I lifted it, felt the softness, smelled her perfume. My fingers closed around it like a promise. I tucked it into my apron, deep, where no one would see. I took the grocery list, turned it over. The back was blank. Perfect. I uncapped a pen, wrote in small, neat letters. 1. Slideshow, cabin photos, love letters, fair picture 2. Driveway salt everywhere except her spot. 3. Dessert, let karma call 3 courses, 3 strikes. I underlined karma twice. The scarf shifted against my hip, warm as a heartbeat. I folded the list, slid it beside the scarf. Evidence and ammunition, side by side, footsteps outside. I held my breath. The door stayed shut. I counted to 10, then 20. Silence. I opened the pantry, peeked out. The hallway empty. I stepped into the kitchen, scarf and plan hidden beneath my apron like contraband. Gloria stood at the sink, rinsing glasses. She didn't turn, but her voice carried. Got everything you need. I touched the pocket. Almost. She nodded once. Laurie appeared in the doorway, eyes red but steady. Guests are asking for coffee. I smoothed my apron, felt the weight of my weapons. Tell them, it's brewing. I picked up the coffee tray, balanced it steady. My hands no longer trembled. They knew their purpose. As I walked back to the dining room, I caught my reflection in the microwave door. Eyes bright, chin high. The woman staring back looked like someone who'd waited 40 years for this moment. I smiled at her, she smiled back. The main course waited, and I was finally hungry. I clicked play and watched 40 years of smug melt off her face. The dining room lights dimmed to a honeyed glow. I'd asked Laurie to kill the chandelier, leaving only the tree's soft twinkle and the projector's cool blue beam. Frank rubbed his hands, expecting our usual montageler's first steps, our silver-anniversary cruise. He leaned back, bourbon in hand, grinning like a man about to open gifts. I stood beside the screen, remote cool against my palm. A special treat, I said, voice light as meringue. Family Memories, Caroline's Greatest Hits, 1978 to 1982. Caroline's fork paused halfway to her lips. Frank's grin faltered. The title slide bloomed in bold red letters across the white wall. Gasps fluttered around the table. I pressed the button again. The first photo filled the room. Caroline, at 18, perm so tight it looked electrified, holding a trophy labeled Miss Fireball, 1977. Laughter rippled, nervous at first, then genuine. I let it breathe. Slide 2, Caroline in bell scrawled across the bottom in her own teenage cursive. Frank, my forever. Frank choked on his bourbon. Caroline's cheeks flamed darker than the wine stain on her coat. I kept my smile small, polite. So many memories, I murmured. The room hushed, waiting for the next click. I felt every heartbeat in my fingertips. The remote was my conductor's baton, and the orchestra was about to play. Slide 7. Caroline, at 19. Crowned Miss Fireball 1977. The photo was grainy, scanned from a yellowed yearbook, but the details screamed. Caroline teetered on platform heels, sash crooked, eyes glassy, clutching a half-empty bottle of cinnamon schnapps. The caption beneath typed in Comic Sans for extra sting read, "Future Mrs. Miller, everybody." The room erupted. Lori clapped a hand over her mouth, shoulders shaking. Gloria let out a bark of laughter that turned into a cough. Even the minister's wife snorted. Caroline's face cycled through red, white, purple. She gripped the table edge so hard her knuckles blanched. Next slide. A love poem, photocopied from Caroline's old diary. "Your eyes are twin lakes. I drown happily." Frank's name signed at the bottom, in purple ink. I'd found the diary in a box Frank swore he'd tossed decades ago. Another slide. Prom night. Caroline's date, clearly not Frank. Her lipstick smeared across the wrong cheek. The laughter swelled, warm and merciless. Caroline tried to stand. Her chair caught on the rug. She stumbled, caught herself on Frank's shoulder. He flinched. Slide 9. Caroline, at 21, hair flattened by a bad home dye, posing beside Frank's first pickup. The truck looked proud. Caroline looked desperate. I let the image linger. The room's glee crested, then settled into delicious silence. Caroline's voice cracked. "Turn it off." I tilted my head. "But we're only halfway through desert." I clicked again. The screen filled with a close-up of her teenage braces, glinting under disco lights. Someone whispered, "Lord have mercy." I felt the years peel away from her like old wallpaper, revealing the insecure girl beneath the cashmere. The equalizer had arrived, and it wore my smile. His face matched the cranberry sauce, deep red and congealing. Frank lurched to his feet, chair legs screeching. "Janet, enough." He reached for the remote. I stepped aside, letting him grasp empty air. The room watched, breath held. I pressed the button one last time. The final slide glowed. A screenshot of Caroline's DM to Frank, time-stamped 3 weeks ago. "Janet won't notice if we meet at the cabin. Same key, under the frog. The frog, our frog, the ceramic one I'd painted on our honeymoon. The cabin, our cabin, where Lori learned to swim. The key, my key." Frank froze. The words hung larger than life, white on black. Caroline's hand flew to her throat. Lori's eyes filled. Gloria sat back, arms crossed, satisfaction etched in every line. I let the silence stretch until it snapped. Frank's mouth opened, closed. "Jan, I can explain." "Explain what?" My voice cut clean. "Did you keep her key?" "That you answered." I turned to the table. "Does anyone need coffee?" No one spoke. Frank sank into his chair, shoulders folding like wet paper. The remote felt heavier now, warm from my grip. Caroline tried to laugh it off. Old flirtation, nothing more. Her voice cracked on old. I met her eyes. "Old enough to break a promise," I said. Frank stared at his plate, cranberry sauce, cooling into a scab. The truth sat between us. Finally invited to dinner, and it wasn't leaving early. Mother Nature and I had a little agreement tonight. Caroline grabbed her ruined coat, muttered about leaving, and stormed toward the front door. I followed at a leisurely pace, slipping into boots and scarf. "Let me walk you out," I said, sweet as pie. She didn't argue. Outside, the air bit sharp. Snow had stopped, leaving a glossy crust over everything. I'd salted the walkway at dusk, every inch except the narrow strip where Caroline's silver Lexus sat. She didn't notice. She yanked the door handle, slid inside, turned the key. The engine roared, tires spun, nothing. She revved again. Wheels whirred, spitting ice like confetti. The car rocked, but stayed rooted. I stood on the porch, hands in pockets, breath fogging. "Need a push?" I called. Caroline rolled down the window. "What did you do?" I shrugged. "Roads, slick, happens." Another rev. The Lexus lurched, then settled deeper. She tried reverse aim, result. Her face appeared at the window, makeup streaked, eyes wild. "Call a tow." On Christmas Eve, I checked my watch. "They're booked till morning." I pointed to the guest room window, plenty of space inside. Caroline slammed the steering wheel. The horn blared once, lonely in the quiet night. I felt the cold seep through my coat, delicious against my skin. Somewhere inside, Lori watched from the curtain. Gloria raised a cocoa mug in salute. Caroline tried the door, locked herself in. Smart, I waved. Sleep tight. I turned back to the house, boots crunching the salted path. Behind me, the engine cut off. Silence fell, thick as the snow. Nature had delivered the entree, and Caroline was the main course, marinated in her own panic, served ice cold. I couldn't wait for dessert. Her knight in shining armor hung up faster than you can say white cashmere. Caroline had locked herself in the guest bathroom, phone pressed to her ear, voice rising in frantic whispers. I stood outside the door, cocoa in hand, listening. The slideshow still glowed in the dining room. Guests lingered, murmuring, waiting for the next act. A ringtone cut through, cheerful, tinny, jingle bells. Caroline snatched it. Richard, finally. I cracked the door. She sat on the vanity stool, mascara streaked, hair escaping its pins. The screen lit her face. Richard, silver-haired, tanned, golf shirt, crisp, frowned from Florida. What's this about a slideshow? Caroline's breath hitched. It's nothing. Just. I leaned in, voice soft, hit speaker. Dear, we're all family, she fumbled. The room filled with Richard's baritone. Caroline Pierce, is that you drunk at 19 with a schnapps bottle? The bathroom mirror reflected the dining room screen behind me. Slide 7 glowed. Caroline, sash askew, eyes crossed. Richard's jaw dropped. And those texts to Frank. The cabin, my cabin. Caroline's mouth opened, closed. Richard, I can explain, packing my golf clubs for a man who kept you in his past like a bad haircut. His laugh was sharp. We're done. Merry Christmas. The screen went black. Caroline stared at the blank phone. A single tear slid, cutting a clean line through the foundation. I set the cocoa on the counter. Sugar? I asked. She didn't answer. The scales had tipped, and Karma wore golf cleats, 40 years late, but the box still had our wedding date engraved. Frank found me in the kitchen, wiping counters that didn't need wiping. The house had quieted, guests gone, Lori upstairs, Caroline sulking in the Lexus. He closed the door soft, like entering church. I didn't turn. The sponge circled the same spot. He cleared his throat. Jan, I kept wiping. He stepped closer, boots scuffing linoleum. Something small clinked onto the counter beside me, a velvet box, faded blue, corners worn. I knew it before I looked. Our date, June 14th, 85, etched in gold script. Frank's knees cracked as he lowered himself. 69 years old, on the floor where I'd taught Lori to walk. I bought these the week after our honeymoon, he said, voice gravel, meant to surprise you. Then, life happened. I forgot. I opened the box. Diamonds winked, modest but perfect, the kind a young man saves for. My throat tightened. He took my hand, calluses, rough against my knuckles. I was wrong. About tonight. About her. About us. I looked down at him, gray, hair thinning, eyes red-rimmed, the man who'd carried me over thresholds, who'd held my hand through miscarriages and mortgages. You kept her key, I said. I kept fear, he whispered. Fear of being old, useless. She made me feel 20 again. He pressed the box into my palm. You make me feel forever. I closed the lid. The click echoed. Forever starts with truth, I said. He nodded, tears falling onto my kitchen tiles. I helped him up, his arms wrapped around me. Trembling, I let them stay. The flames smelled like victory and lavender. Lori came downstairs in flannel pajamas, hair twisted up, eyes still puffy. The fire crackled low. Embers glowed like secrets. She carried Caroline's scarf, cream cashmere, monogrammed, forgotten, on the banister. Coffee? I asked. She nodded. I poured 2 mugs, added the good cream. We sat on the hearth, knees touching. The scarf lay between us like a sleeping cat. Lori traced the CP with one finger. I almost left, she said. Packed my bag. Then I thought, what would you do? I sipped. The cocoa burned perfect. I'd stay, I said, and fight with fire. She smiled, small but real. You taught me strength tonight, Mom. Not the quiet kind, the loud kind. She lifted the scarf, held it to the flames. The edge caught, curled black, then bloomed orange. Lavender scent, rose sharp and sweet. We fed it inch by inch, watching monograms melt. Sparks danced up the chimney. Lori leaned her head on my shoulder. Dad's asleep on the couch, she said, snoring like a freight train. Let him, I said. Some lessons need rest. The last thread burned away. Ash settled soft as snow. Lori hugged me tight. Next Christmas, she whispered, just us. I kissed her hair. The fire settled into steady warmth, and I felt my mother's roses bloom again in the heat. The tow truck's engine sang sweeter than any carol. Dawn painted the snow pink when it rumbled up the drive, chains clinking like sleigh bells. Caroline stood on the porch in Frank's old parka, hair a bird's nest, eyes swollen. The driver hooked her Lexus without a word. She didn't look back. Inside, Gloria raised her cocoa mug. To Janet, she proclaimed, voice ringing off rafters. May every woman know her worth at any age. Lori clinked her mug. Frank, sheepish in robe and slippers, lifted his eyes, stood at the window, watching the car disappear around the bend. Gloria continued, 2 tables we set, battles we win, and sisters who stand guard. She winked at Lori. And 2 scarves that make excellent kindling. We left belly deep. The kitchen smelled of bacon and redemption. Frank refilled my mug without asking. Lori snapped a photo. 3 generations. Cocoa steam curling like halos. Gloria pinned it to the fridge with a magnet shaped like Texas. Outside, the tow truck's taillights faded. Inside, the tree lights blinked steady. I touched the diamond earrings, heavy, real, finally mine. Gloria squeezed my hand. You, okay? I looked at my family, flawed, forgiven, fierce. Better than okay, I said. The sun rose higher, gilding the snow, and for the first time in 40 years, Christmas felt entirely mine. The table seats 12, now none of them ghosts. Christmas 2026 dawned clear and cold, the kind of morning that turns breath to lace. I set the dining room with mismatched china, every plate a story, every cup a survivor. No white cashmere in sight. No perfume but cinnamon and pine. The ladies of Legacy brunch began at 10. Gloria arrived first, arms full of pecan rolls, still warm. Then came Ruth from Bridge Club, widowed last spring, eyes bright with purpose. Marlene brought her famous cheese grits. 12 women total, all over 60, all carrying scars like medals. Frank bustled in the kitchen, apron tied tight, dipping bacon under my watchful eye. He'd been volunteering at the senior center since January, my condition for the earrings staying in my ears. He served coffee now, without being asked, refilled water glasses, cleared plates with the humility of a man who'd learned the hard way. Lori swept in at 11, cheeks pink from cold, coat unbuttoned over a gentle swell. She kissed my cheek. Baby's kicking, she whispered. I pressed my palm to her belly, felt the flutter like a promise. The table erupted in soft cheers. No slideshows this year, just stories, real ones, told over mimosas and laughter. Ruth spoke of selling her late husband's boat and buying a cruise ticket instead. Marlene admitted she'd started painting again, watercolors of the lake at sunrise. I listened, heart full. The room smelled of bacon and possibility. Outside, snow glittered under sunshine, clean and new. Frank set a fresh pot of coffee in the center. Our eyes met. He nodded, grateful. I nodded back. The past had been salted away. The future sat warm at my table. 12 strong. Some apologies are better fuel than forgiveness. The envelope arrived mid-January. Florida postmark. Caroline's looping script. I left it on the counter 3 days, unopened, while I dusted and baked, and ignored the tug of curiosity. On the 4th morning, I slit it with the paring knife I used for apples. The letter was 2 pages, heavy, stationary, perfume faint but unmistakable. She wrote of regret, of loneliness in a condo overlooking a golf course, of Richard's silence and her own reflection in too many mirrors. I was wrong, she said. Please forgive me. I read it once, then again, the words blurred. I thought of the cabin key, the broken plate, the scarf curling into flame. I carried the pages to the fireplace, struck a match. The paper caught quick, edges blackening, ink running like tears. I watched until only ash remained, gray and weightless. Lori walked in, coat dusted with snow. Mail, she asked. I brushed ash from my fingers. Junk, she smiled, then took my hand and placed it on her belly again. Stronger kick this time. We're telling Dad tonight, she said. Girl. I felt the flutter turn to wings. Caroline's ashes settled into the great, forgotten, new life pressed against my palm, insistent and warm. Some doors close forever, others open in the same breath. If you're over 60 and still setting the table, this one's for you. I'm speaking to you now, just us, the way I would across my own kitchen table. The tree lights are off. the dishes done, the house quiet except for the tick of the grandfather clock. I've poured myself a small sherry, and I want you to imagine yours whatever comforts you after a long day. You stayed with me through the spilled wine, the shattered plate, the slideshow that turned smug to shame. You felt the ice under Caroline's tires, the heat of the scarf in the flames. Maybe you remembered your own Christmas, your own intruder, your own moment when dignity hung by a thread. I hope you also felt the shift, how a woman can wait 40 years and still choose herself in one night. I'm 68 now, and I've learned this. The table is yours, the menu, the guest list, the salt on the walkwayers. You don't need permission to protect your peace. You don't need applause to know your worth. But if you want company, pull up a chair. My comment section is open, and I read every word. Tell me your three-course nightmare, the appetizer that started it, the entree that broke the silence, the dessert that tasted like freedom. Did you spill the wine? Burn the letter? Keep the earrings? I want to know. I'll pin the best ones to my fridge, right beside Laurie's ultrasound. Frank's asleep upstairs, snoring off the bacon in humility. Laurie's practicing lullabies to her belly. Gloria texted a photo of her new watercolor sunrise over the lake, roses in the foreground. The world keeps turning, and we keep setting the table. So here's to you, 70, 80, 90. To the hands that still tremble, but still pour. To the hearts that still ache, but still love. To the women who refuse to be afterthoughts at their own feasts. Your table, your rules always. I'll see you in the comments, and I'll bring the cocoa.